So it's lovely to have your company here this evening for a session on permaculture education. What we're exploring here is what are the possibilities? What are the opportunities? How do you get started in permaculture? What are the sorts of things that you need to think about and explore? And so this session tonight is tonight for me. So welcome wherever you are joining from around the world. I'm seated here in the land of Gubbi Gubbi land, the unceded land of the Gubbi Gubbi, here in the Sunshine Coast of Queensland. I'm based in an eco-village called Crystal Waters, where I've been here for about 25 years as a permaculture educator and creating permaculture living environments that I can share in a permaculture education way. So what I was about to say was I think this is a little bit of a different kind of masterclass than ones I've done before. Some of you might have seen different masterclasses that I've offered, and I share a presentation about a certain topic, a topic that's normally offered by the group. This one I thought I'd try a bit differently, and I have over the last few weeks been inviting people to ask me a question. What are the kinds of things that you would like to learn about in becoming a permaculture educator? So that is the theme of what we're exploring today. So what I'm going to do is just start with the questions. Let me just see if I can move it forward. There we go. So essentially, the questions came in a series of different themes. So the first one was around what are the opportunities that are available. The other one was how do you learn about permaculture to become a permaculture teacher, and how do you even get started in that? Other questions were around the theme of what are the expectations and requirements that you need to think about in order to become a permaculture educator. And then there were questions about, well, how do you keep it going and how do you keep the momentum going once you've started? So they're the kind of themes that we're going to explore through the sessions. So the first question I wanted to dive into, and what I'm going to do is basically just pop into each of the different screens a question that someone has asked. And what I'd also like just mention too, that in the chat, if you haven't found it already, if you click onto that, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I've put a little sticky note up there saying, please share your name, where you're calling in from, and perhaps a little bit about why it is that you're interested in permaculture teaching too. And this is a place where throughout the session, please feel free to offer in extra ideas that you might have, or different links to resources that you find useful in that topic, so that we can have a kind of a generative conversation here as well while the presentation's happening. And also, hello Clinton, thank you very much for being here and helping too. I'm just wondering as well whether you can also keep an eye on other questions that might come there. So when we get towards the end, if there's other questions that haven't been addressed during this session, we can stop and have a look at those as well. So the first question was really around this thing about what are the opportunities for permaculture teachers? And I wanted to take a broad perspective on this, because there is no one simple answer to this question. In fact, I would like to say there are so many enormous possibilities for permaculture teachers in the world right now. As you know, there are so many things that we're facing, so many multiple crises that are all interconnected. And something about what permaculture is offering into the world is offering a practical, positive response to this in a way that local communities are able to feel like they have some sense of agency in that, and that they are able to find a way to create local resilience. It doesn't matter whether you're in a refugee settlement in Uganda, and we work with many people in that part of the world too, Perma youth groups here in Australia, to wherever you might be. So, whether you're in an urban area or a rural area, there's possibilities to, maybe be a one-on-one designer, which is also an educator, because you're working with a client to educate and to explore the possibilities forward. You could be offering classes in a local library about how to do a certain small aspect of permaculture. You could be in an organization and you can apply a permaculture lens to what you're already doing and start to offer a series of professional development type workshops. And I think this is an incredibly interesting way to think about the possibilities, because often when I hear people talk about permaculture teaching, it's saying, oh, well, I need to teach the permaculture design course or an introduction to permaculture. There are so many, many different ways that you can become a permaculture educator. Bring your whole self, all your experience, all your background, and weave it together with permaculture. And I think this is probably one of the key things that I think is really important to take on board, is that when you start a permaculture course, is to acknowledge, no one's starting from a blank slate. So what is the profession that you're coming with, or what are the particular skill sets that you have? And everyone brings something extremely unique about the weaving that you have of your experience and your passion and your profession into this, and also where you are. So I think what the idea is, and what we talk a lot about within permaculture in our course, is to try and identify what that is and where those places, where those sweet spots for you are. So someone asked too, how would I describe what the role of a permaculture teacher is in today's societal context? And I kind of touched on that in my introduction. And I think it is a lot about this being a guide for a positive future, helping to be there to help local communities, for example, to reimagine what a sustainable or regenerative narrative might be in that local area, looking at ways to redesign our human habitats so that they can be restorative of our local environments and regenerative of our human habitats, and then to be able to find a way to pass that on and to encourage other people to pass that on. So, I kind of think in a way a permaculture educator helps to open doors to see a different way forward, to maybe show examples of where there is a more sustainable way of doing things, a simpler way of doing things, a more localized way of doing things, something that is creating towards a one planet way of living, something that is helping us to have healthy human habitats that are taking care of the well-being of people and planet in a very localized way. So that was a very long description, but I think I hope you get a sense that there is not one necessary thing. It's not about just teaching a system. It is about this helping other people to see how they can use this lens to move forward. And within that too, it is also, it is also about teaching about the permaculture ethics and the principles and the practices and the processes. There's a set of tools, and we can help people to fill up their toolbox with a kit that they can go out into the world and apply it wherever they might be, and to adapt it locally. So a question that I thought was really interesting too was, what are some of the niches that aren't being filled at the moment? And I thought about this for a long time, and I went, oh my gosh, there are so many niches that aren't being filled at the moment. And you just need to look around your own local community and through your particular perspective and have a look and see what is on offer presently in terms of permaculture education or permaculture services, or even, free local permaculture education. And I'm not saying that you need to offer it for free. Now, I think this is something that we really need to think about. Being a permaculture educator is an entirely valuable skill, and it's something that is so important to be offering into the world. And we need to find a way that those people who are offering it are also being nurtured and nourished and supported so that they can continue to do this work and continue to be supported. So this is really a very big, a very strong direction that I like to encourage people to move in. So, for example, if you are working in the library, and one of the things that I've done for the last decade is to offer workshops throughout community organisations, community libraries, local government, and the local government pays for those workshops. So the people who come get it for free, but the local government pays for that to be delivered as part of their sustainability program. Or there was one program I used to be involved in, it was called the Gold Program, and it was growing old and living dangerously. So it was about, identifying ways that permaculture could be adapted for people in that context. And there was also a chill out program. So that was about doing a youth program, so the local government would pay for that. There are lots of grants that you can access as well to help you to deliver and design and offer a set of programs. So even if you're wanting to offer it for free, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't get any resources for it. So I wanted just to mention that because I think that's important. What are some of the things that I think are niches that haven't been, developing resources for educators. There is a big call out for teachers in particular to have kits that they can use that are really easy to access, that are something they don't have a whole lot of time, but they really want to be able to deliver that kind of content. So that is something. One of the things I think is totally untapped is the idea of, and I mentioned it before, it's this professional development. So are you a teacher, for example, or are you an architect? Are you a builder? Are you, what is something where you are, like a health professional? I was having a really fantastic conversation yesterday morning with a mental health nurse, and she was telling me about how she could see so much potential for offering permaculture to her clients, but yet there wasn't really much resources there. And she felt like all of the nurses within that system and the centres that were running them could do with some professional development in that. So this is the thing what I was saying before again about what is that lens that you bring, and then start to look, okay, if I'm looking from that perspective and apply permaculture, how is it that I can contribute permaculture into what I already know so intimately? And it's not about sort of like moving entirely away and saying, okay, well, now I'm in permaculture and I'm leaving that behind. It's about blending. Although I've also spoken to someone today who's saying, I'm just over what I'm doing at the moment and I just completely want to change. And in that case, then that's heading in a direction that I'm going to talk about soon as well. So there's something for everyone in a way. Oops, I think we went the wrong way. Let me see. There we go. All right, here's another interesting question. What can permaculture teaching look like for introverts? Now, I also would love to invite you, if you feel like there's a response that you'd like to give to any of these questions, please go ahead and pop it in the chat as well. Like if you have a response to this, like if you're feeling like you're an introvert and what you feel like are possibilities for you, just go ahead and add them in, because I think the more that we get conversation happening around this, the better. But, let's have a think about that. What are some of the possibilities for introverts? So one could be just, as I mentioned earlier, like some one-to-one mentoring, or a friend of mine runs something called Permacoach. And so that's just working with people one-on-one to teach them, to mentor and coach them through shifting their life to a more regenerative way. It could be the writing, or even forming part of a team. So that in terms of delivering permaculture education programs, it's always a team effort. And so, maybe there's roles of people that are out the front, but as the introvert, there is like definitely roles that you can be playing within that. Maybe it's about creating a homestay where, you can invite people into a guest house, not necessarily come into your home, but there's a place that they can come in, they can learn from you in your area, and you not necessarily have to stand up in front of a group. Maybe as a photographer or a filmmaker, or offering online education programs that are a non-contact type of online education. So again, I see there's lots of different possibilities, and it's really like feeling into what it is that you feel like you can offer. And what I know is that if you feel like that, no doubt there's going to be a whole lot of other people that feel like that too. And whatever you put out is what you attract. So if you put out a kind of a content or a program with a certain feel about it and a certain wording and a style, you'll attract those kind of people into it. So so Natalie's put in here, she's saying she's a total introvert, but as soon as she gets feeling confident about it, she will just talk, or enthusiastic, she can talk all day. So Absolutely. I think, and that's it. It's that falling into where you feel comfortable and not like you put out in a sort of a zone where you're feeling out of your depth. So that again is that weaving with what you feel, what you bring into this as well. Thanks, Natalie, for that. Okay, what qualifications do you need to teach permaculture? And is the permaculture qualification recognised? So here's some really good chunky technical questions to tackle. So first of all, there's a couple of different responses, and I'm going to do one at a time. And I would love to offer and see if there's any other input from you too. So what qualifications do you need to teach permaculture? So basically, the global agreement in the permaculture community is that the basic qualification is the Permaculture Design Certificate course, and so that is a set curriculum that is agreed upon, and that is the foundational content of a course. And in order to teach it, at least have done that. Now, the idea that is also shared amongst the global community is that you then go ahead and you practice and you experiment and you test it out and you try it teaching a little bit, and then you try teaching a little bit more, and you build up your experience. You don't sort of jump straight from doing a permaculture course into trying to offer a full permaculture design certificate course. However, if you have had a lifelong experience in doing this work and you come from a design background and you've just done your permaculture design course, of course, you've got all the ingredients that you need to be able to go out and start to teach. So it's different for everyone. And I think it's really about just negotiating that and feeling into when you feel ready. Now, in terms of, is this recognized? So it's recognized by the global community. In Australia, we have a different kind of system as well, which is so there's that type of more informal, peer-to-peer, community-approved permaculture system. Then there's also the registered training organisations or the accredited permaculture training by the government, and that is where there's certificate 1, 2, 3, 4, and a diploma. And so if you were wanting to actually go into, thank you, Steve, for offering that. So there's the core curriculum that's offered through the Permaculture Association, dropped in there. That link there is brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that. So if you're wanting to teach, say, into an Australian school, certificate 2 to the students at a school, you would also need to have that certificate. However, what I find is a lot of people who might have that then also still come and do these more sort of enrichment courses in permaculture and keep drawing on all the other community resources. Now, each country has its own kind of set of agreements, but I think the standard thing is that you have a PDC, and then there can be different layers of experience. So you can be like a master teacher, but if you've done like 10 PDCs and done 10 designs, and that's kind of at the diploma level. But you can start to teach workshops and all different kinds of things just at that basic level there. So I don't want people to feel like it's going to take you a lifetime to get there. Also, one of the things that Rosemary Morrow and I have talked a lot about too, and particularly when we're working in refugee settlements, like we want people to be able to pass this on as quickly as possible. So those permaculture design courses get taught, and then they're encouraged to be shared on to the next person and shared on to the next person. It has to myceliate quickly, because otherwise, there's the hunger and the famine is catching up with people. And so we need to encourage that in that context. Do I need to complete the permaculture design certificate course before becoming a permaculture teacher? Is another question that someone asked. So yes, in order to be able to teach the permaculture course and in order to call yourself a permaculture teacher. So the agreement, again, the global agreement is that this is, to do the PDC is something that you can then go, okay, I'm a permaculture designer, I'm a permaculture teacher, because you have this shared language. You understand all the different aspects of it, and it's a sort of a consistency that we can work. And this is the way that it's been able to go to just about every country in the world and go so far and so deep into communities, because it has this sort of trust basis that's at the core of it. That's not to say, however, that you can't start teaching as soon as you're going through the course. And this has happened a lot. People might get to the soil course, and they start diving into that. They get so enthusiastic, and then they start offering workshops about soil to someone else. And they can talk about permaculture as part of that. But they're not saying, I am a permaculture teacher and this is a permaculture course. They're sharing what they know and love about soil. So I think that hopefully makes that clear. How much of an expert do I need to be to teach others? Oh my gosh, this is such a fraught thing. And do I have to know everything before I start? I remember when I was first starting teaching permaculture, I was terrified. I thought, what if someone asked me something I don't know? And I'd be so embarrassed. And I think I got to the point of realizing that I will never know everything. And I still don't know everything. The more that I know, the more that I realize I don't know. And it's about staying in this process of being curious, of knowing what you know and putting that forward. And if someone asks you a really tricky question and, wow, that's an amazing question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I do know where I can find someone to ask that question. And so this is the thing about not trying to sort of step up and put yourself as the expert, but put yourself as this curious person who's in the learning process together. And you can be a guide and a facilitator. And, of course, you have expertise in certain areas, but you're not the overall expert who knows everything, because, no one ever does. And that's the honest truth of it. And so there's lots of great comments coming in here too about saying teach in a team, and that way you've got the combined experience. Absolutely. And also, one of the things that I find quite often is if you're in a group situation and a question comes up and you don't have the answer to it, is to throw it back into the group and ask if someone, and you never know. It's extraordinary, the skills and the experience that people bring into the class. Like I said before, no one comes in as a blank slate. Everyone has knowledge and skills and experience, and that's drawing on the richness of that as a facilitator is one of the key skills. All right, here's another question. Can you teach when you have read a lot, dabbled in pots on your balcony, but not really got to grips with larger plot? Or do you have to have years of experience before you can teach? Okay, so this here brings up the question of scale and also context. I think it's really important to keep in mind that there are some people who've grown up in the countryside, and that's what they know. That scale and that kind of land management is what they know. But if you put them in an apartment in a balcony context, they probably have no idea really where to begin. Similarly, if you've got someone who's grown up in an urban environment and can see the niches and really can find the intricacies in that. We've had people in our courses who've designed these beautiful and amazing permaculture gardens that are on a multi-story building with no soil, no access to any soil. This is in Japan. And so there's things on rooftops, on balconies, there's some things on the windowsills. There's actually something in the basement, which like they've got all these microbes and really amazing compost systems underneath the house. And then also thinking about how they relate to neighbours, how they relate to the commons down the road and to a local market. And so there's a sort of a different scale and a different set of relationships. So if you are based in an apartment and that is your set of skills and experience, then that would be the place where you go, okay, if someone would like to come and have a look at my balcony garden, or I can teach you about how you can do micro gardens or micro composting, then that is a fantastic skill. And that is actually a niche that I think really needs to be explored so much more, because there's so many people in so many parts of the world where that is the reality. So I think that's particularly interesting. Michelle said, in fact, there are people that only do balcony gardening. So yes, entirely. So don't feel intimidated by the fact that you don't have experience in some way. You can take the permaculture principles and ideas and the zones and the sectors and apply it to a different context. And in fact, the application of the permaculture principles and strategies to different contexts is one of the most brilliant things that I find about permaculture is its adaptability. One of the best films that's got the best response on my YouTube channel is one that I took on a balcony garden on the fourth floor in Nairobi. And so inside she's doing, she has chickens on the balcony and she's growing insects for them inside, and she's got mushrooms growing in her bathroom, and there's so much going on there. It's fascinating. And what can you learn from that? An enormous amount. She's doing seed saving, all sorts. So of course you still need to be, still do the course to be able to teach permaculture and keep practicing. But as soon as you have something under your belt, then start to share it. Okay, someone else has said, I have a primary teaching degree, so I guess primary school teaching degree. What else do I need to teach permaculture? Well, I think I've answered that one already too, in terms of, yes, you may come with a teaching degree. Like I've got a master's in environmental education, sustainability education, but in order to call my course a permaculture course, I still needed to do the permaculture course. So that just gives you a greater level of experience to be able to teach in a primary context and to apply the permaculture lens in that context. Someone else has said, I'm a qualified teacher, but I lack the confidence in my permaculture knowledge and skills. What should I do? So again, this is a really interesting question. And again, it's about, well, first I would encourage you to go and volunteer in a community project, maybe go and visit other schools where permaculture gardens are in place and see how other teachers are applying it. Perhaps try and see if you can organise a professional development day where you invite people to come together to explore and do that. And there's also a number of different groups, say, for example, here in Australia, like the Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Garden Program that does professional development days, and also incredible work by Leonie Shanahan, who's got the Edible School Gardens book, and people like Janet Millington, who have the outdoor classrooms, and the Children in Permaculture teacher training. So there's a lot of different things that you can draw on there. Someone else asked, is it preferable to have some type of horticulture qualification? Well, no, not necessarily, unless you're wanting to do horticulture type of permaculture. Some people have told me that actually, they have to rethink a whole lot of their horticulture training when they do permaculture. But if you'd like to set up something like a nursery or seed programs and all sorts of things, and perhaps, that horticulture, and someone like Annette McFarlane's work is just brilliant in that. One of my mother-in-law actually went and trained in permaculture by this horticulture teacher, and she absolutely loved it. So bringing the together, it can, it again is another beautiful combination that can happen, but there's so many different combinations. You don't need to have that to be able to do permaculture. Someone else said, I know permaculture, but I find it hard to explain in words. What do I do? Well, I think in that case, one of the best things I can suggest to begin with would be to show it. So if you know permaculture and you have a garden somewhere that is either yours or one that you're working on as a community garden, or that one that you're familiar with, you can actually do what I call a walk and talk, a tour of a garden. And it's when it's right in front of you, you can start to explain what's going on there, and then you can start to explain how that applies to permaculture. And it's more of the seeing and the tasting and the touching and the experience, the experiential nature of that learning. It needs less words. Or if you're doing a presentation, an online one, then maybe using far more pictures to explain it and to point out the things that you're noticing. So I think that would be the way to approach that. Someone else has asked about what types of learning materials to provide when you're a permaculture educator. Well, sometimes I think that the tendency is wanted to oversupply materials. What I think is really great at the end of a short workshop, per se, would be something that is the essence of what it is that you've just delivered, with links to all things that you can then follow up and dive more deeply into. And also point to some of the key books that might be relevant for people. There might be some key articles or films or YouTube clips or podcasts, but you can just, and I think this is the beauty of digital resources. One thing I did recently, I just did a whole series of workshops at a festival over the weekend. And at the end of the presentation, I just had a QR code. Now, everyone knows how to use QR codes these days because of, all the, signing into everywhere. So I just had this QR code at the end of the presentation, and people clicked on that. And that way they could get a copy of the presentation and links to the notes that were part of that. And that's a really easy thing to do. And you can just keep that updated. But even still, a simple little handout is sometimes nice, but keep it simple. All right, so the next question is, I'd like to create storytelling resources to be used in classrooms to help teach young children the principles of permaculture. What kind of resources are already available and distributed? And where do you see any gaps and potential for new resources and stories? Well, I think this is an enormous space and an enormous niche. One of the groups in our Permaculture Educators Program, so we have there's the Permaculture Design course, the Permaculture Teachers course, and then through that there's a lot of different groups that are forming. And one of those is a group that are writing children's stories. They're working on their first book at the moment, which is about soil. Then they're going to work on guilds. So it's this collaborative effort, and we're hoping to publish them through the Institute. And one of that member of the group is an illustrator. I don't know if you can see this because my picture's quite small, but she's from Korea. This is Yul. She's actually created this most beautiful book all about soil, the soil story in a Korean context, using Korean forest garden methods. And so we're hoping maybe we can get this translated into English. And then someone also said, can we get that translated into Spanish? And so there's Steve said, I have Google photo album with all the books I use. Great. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So there are some really good resources, but I also think there's a lot that are missing. Ones that particularly relate to, maybe it's in a different language, or maybe it's in a different climatic zone, or maybe it's using a different cultural story. And so I think there's a lot of possibility for exploring this and weaving in the storytelling. And I think this is something not just for children either. There's a movement at the moment based on Throughtopia. I'm actually doing a course, and we have this notion of there's utopia, which is kind of this idealized future, or there's the dystopia, which is like, everything's going to collapse. But what are the Througtopias? How can we find, what are the type of skills and ideas and narratives, and what are the stories that we need that will help us to get through these challenging times that we're facing? And so I think these kind of stories are important. And there's so much about permaculture that is weaving into those stories to be told for all different ages: short stories, long stories, films, particularly films. There's a woman called Kate. Her second name's just gone from me. But anyway, she creates Dirt Girl World, which is an Australian television show for children, which is based entirely on permaculture. And Kate McQuillan, thank you, brain. And she now consults with film teams all around the world to actually think about what's going on behind the scenes. So there's the story that's going on in the front, which is doing something, but what do they walk past? What does the house look like? What's going on down the street? All of those things are so important in terms of cultivating our sense of what is normal. And so I think the storytelling and the visual storytelling are incredibly important parts of what we need to be focusing on. All right, so requirements for the physical learning environment. Now, well, first of all, you'd want to make it a safe learning environment. You'd want to create an environment which has something that's really suitable for the particular local environment, that demonstrates maybe the principles. It doesn't have to be a finished thing. And this is something that I really wanted to point out with this question as well. Some people have actually told me, said, well, it's all well and good because your garden's all done and set up, but I want to know how you get started. And what I learned from that is that it's important to show the journey. What happens at the very start? What's the next step? What's the step after that? So the learning environment doesn't have to be a finished garden. The learning environment can be one that's in process and engaging people along that journey. So There's lots of things to think about. And I think the more types of actual teaching farms and learning farms and educational gardens and open spaces that people can come and see and taste and touch and feel and experience and maybe watch on YouTube is so important. And so there is also through the British Association, there is the Permaculture Britain, there is this ILAND, the International Learning and Demonstration Centres. I'm not sure I got that acronym right, but you get the picture. It's a global, well, mostly Britain at the moment, but trying to be global network of learning and demonstration centres. And so you can find them. And if you have a centre and you'd like to apply to be one of those centres, it's a great thing to do, because that means that you then get put on the list and people can find you. So if you're wanting to offer courses at your place and you're at one of those centres, you'll become more visible. So this is an interesting question. Do I need to be a permaculture teacher to run a community garden? No, you don't. But if you want to run permaculture courses at a community centre, well, yes, you do. But you can also run a community garden and invite permaculture teachers, or invite a beekeeper, or invite the different people that you want in to run your programs. I would, however, suggest that you invite a permaculture designer, a community designer, to work with you to help your community garden to create a collaborative permaculture design. I think it's really important. Sometimes I see community gardens getting designed for them by, say, a government landscape architect, and often it doesn't engage the people. They might be asked a few questions, but it doesn't involve them. So the development of the place seems to be like developing someone else's plan. So I think it's really important that people have that intricate involvement in the development of the plan. And so this is actually also part of a permaculture teacher's role, is offering educational environments that get a whole group of people together to design a commons. So the course that you run in that space is purposely designed to help a group to design and know how they can continue to design. And so this is actually something that I've done over and over throughout community gardens and community projects in many parts of the world. And it's a fabulous thing to get involved in. And I would highly recommend you explore that. So someone is also asking about, how do I go about setting up a permaculture training farm on my own land? Well, just start, begin. Now, the thing that you need to keep in mind, though, is that there's the possibilities that you'll need to, if you're starting to open it up and have people coming in for workshops and things like that, that you need to get maybe some kind of license or insurance. And so do your due diligence and make sure that you keep yourself safe, because that's just making sure that you're not going to get caught up with any litigation. There was someone on this morning's session who was a lawyer, and she said, yes, you're absolutely right. Just make sure you do this right. A lot of people, think, I'll just open it up. But you could also be opening yourself up to issues. But so anyway, many of the people who come and do the Permaculture Educators Program with me, I'm speaking about that because that's my current experience of it, are there wanting to design and develop their own place and maybe have either a classroom or a cooking centre or a space where people can come and learn or come and stay or come and visit, or either be for the local neighbourhood or local schools, or people coming from abroad to come and explore it. So it is something that a lot of people want to do. And I think what you really need to be focusing on when you're designing your place is thinking about how you can integrate it as a learning space. So as we're designing these places through the permaculture design course, we're thinking not just about the water systems and the soil systems and the infrastructure. We're thinking about the people flow and how this can be the most educational space possible, and really keeping that in mind in the design stage. And so I think I've already covered this particular question in the last response. So developing a permaculture garden and so find out what license you need, what insurances, and any council permits, and just to make sure that you're all legit. How to achieve balance between practical, hands-on, and theoretical learning? Well, often I've seen in courses and workshops that people come in and they start off with the theory and then they go out and do the practice. I really love to encourage you to do the opposite. Go out and actually visit the site, walk around the site, explore it, taste it, have that experience of it first. And then as much as you possibly can, talk about the theory while you're in the garden, like explain the principles of that, and then maybe come back in and do some kind of integrative process that helps to unpack the kind of theory that you've just learned out in the garden. And I think it sticks so much more. It becomes so much more of, it lands, because it's not like, oh, I've got all this theory and then I've got to remember that when I go out into the landscape. It's more of an immersive process. So I love that way of turning it around, and as much as possible to have it as being the hands-on kind of concept. And this is a similar thing. Well, no, it's slightly different. How to empower participants to co-create their own learning experience. When you're starting out a workshop, it's always great to begin by finding out more about who is in the group, why they're there, what their goals are in terms of learning about permaculture or learning about permaculture education, what it is that they're wanting to get out of that day. Say they've come for a workshop for the day, and then you might have a plan of what you're thinking you might teach, but to be willing to flip that around, to weave in a whole lot of different ideas, and to be responsive, and then make a whole series of offerings, and the group can, in a way, start to say, oh, look, it'd be really great to do this and this, and you can start to pack together a program based on that. You also have to make sure that you cover the things that you said you were going to cover, because that's why they've come as well. So it's about finding that balance there too. So here's another question. The first part of a course or teaching seems so important to capture the audience. What are some tips and ideas you have for this aspect that you think would be really great? Well, again, feel free. Again, please make sure that you keep popping in different ideas into the chat, because I'd love to hear your ideas on this as well. But one of the things that I think is really important is to show the possible. So, I mentioned before about identifying the why, why are you there? And you can share too from your heart why you're there. What is it that really moves you? Why are you involved in permaculture? Why do you bother to teach permaculture? What is it that is important? Show your humanity and connect in that sort of that purpose place. So really find the why, the shared why to begin with. Find the shared goals, but then also very rapidly move into exploring, like, if that, then what is the possible thing that you can work towards? So I love to either, if we have a place around us, to dive into that and to explore it, or to, show a whole lot of pictures or tell some stories about what is possible. So we have this, we can imagine the future. We can reimagine where we can go with this, so that then we can start to work our way into it. And also to invite people to be part of the conversation, so that way it's not just, okay, sit down and listen to me kind of thing. So, all right. One of the questions, now this is a really challenging question, and I'd love also to hear your input on this if you're from an area that was struggling from the bushfires. Someone has asked, how can permaculture be able to assist vulnerable communities who remain impacted by bushfires? So here in Australia, I know, some parts of Europe are being terribly affected. Just recently in Australia, a couple of years ago, there was incredibly huge bushfires. And as you probably heard, and many people are still thinking about housing or just earning an income, and they don't feel they have the funds to start gardening. So a little while ago, actually a couple of years ago now, when it first happened, I was asking about, well, how is it that we could help? Would it be something that would be useful to actually go from community to community offering help in setting up gardens? And they said, no, we're not ready yet. We're still reeling. And then I checked in again a bit later on and asked too, and they said, you know what? And I'd actually been offered some funding through the Lush Foundation to support communities who would like to do this. And so I again approached people that I knew who were local leaders in permaculture within these affected communities. I said, you know what? we don't want the funding. We've had funding thrown at us left, right, and centre. What we can do now is actually be working together, and it's in this working together and recreating these common spaces where we can come together and design together and grow together that the healing happens. And so kind of it was like a big back off comment. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And so it always makes me really conscious of the fact to not just assume that, oh, well, this community needs this. Like, always ask and always see if you can find whether there's an invitation to come and help. If there's not, then just, keep asking. Don't kind of walk away and say, well, they don't want it. Just keep asking and finding a way, if there is, that you can support that. And this is similar to this particular question too, which is why I kind of side by sided them. So I would like to start teaching disadvantaged people and communities about permaculture. And I'd like some recommendations on how I can learn about different communities around the world that would benefit from this and how I'd approach it. So I think one of the things that is really important with this, again, is to listen and to have conversations first and to open up the possibilities. And, again, I've worked in permaculture education around the world, but it's always been by invitation. It's always been, can you come? Like, I've seen what you've been doing there. Can you come and help here? And then that one just leads to the next one, which leads to the next one. And the same thing is happening at the moment in the refugee community. So there is one group that started doing some perma-youth education programs and setting up gardens. And then they started to do little videos of it and share it on social media. And then the other camps were saying, oh, can you help us do that here? And so the leaders from that group would go to the next group, train up some trainers who would then go to the next group. And so this thing just kept spreading. So now it's through 12 different camps. And last year alone, we were able to support 1,500 people to receive their permaculture design certificates in the camp. So all we were doing was doing some crowdfunding to support the local teachers to teach the locally adapted permaculture content, which made sense and was coming from refugees to refugees. And so I think that's really important. If you'd like to go as a support role, volunteer, find, offer, say, look, these are the kind of skills I can offer. Is that helpful? And see if there's a way that might fit in with the program. So similarly too, someone wrote, I often think I'd like to help Indigenous communities set up permaculture. Again, wait for the invitation or go and have a conversation, sit down and have a yarn. And so in terms of actually finding a way into this, I would like to invite you to a session that I'm hosting on 29th of August. So a couple of Mondays from now, I think it's a couple of Mondays from now. And so within the Permaculture Educators Program, there's a couple of women from the Gamilaroi Nation who are involved in permaculture in some way, but are also deeply embedded in their Indigenous culture. And hopefully also another guy who's been involved in the work of Bruce Pascoe are coming together. Three of them are going to be yarning about permaculture. And so I think that's a place where you can start to ask those questions and find out, what does this mean? And where can we go with this? What are the possibilities? So I will send out a follow-up email after this session, and I'll send you an invitation to that as well. So again, it's a free session, and I'd really love for as many people as possible to come along and engage with them in that. Someone's asked, I'll be a volunteer soon at a local high school with special needs kids. I'm brand new at this, and I was hoping you could tell me how to get their attention regarding a veggie garden and composting from the very beginning. Well, one of the things that I think is really, I just heard something running around up in my roof up here. I think it's a phascogale. I've got to try and discover who's up there. Anyway, if they've got no interest whatsoever or have had no history of interest in vegetable gardening or composting, where are you going to begin? Well, sometimes some things I would do would be put on some music out in the garden, so it becomes a fun place to come and go. And so you don't expect to have a whole lot of hard work to start with. You come out and have some music. You might have some food on in the garden, and the food could be out on a nice table, and and food that they like to eat with a little bit of extras that might be coming from the garden. And then at the end of the meal, there might be some scraps, and then you can say, oh, look, the compost is over here. Let me come and show you. And so just incidentally, they get introduced to either harvesting, the being in the garden, feeling what it's like in there, and just starting to feel present. Or maybe it could be doing sculptures. One of the things I love to do is to build really nice, interesting teepee trellises, for example. So you give them a whole lot of materials and say, look, see if you can see who can build like the most interesting sculpture out of this, and it can be a trellis. And some of them I've seen have been beautiful, like woven string, like a spider's web, and it becomes a sculptural, it becomes an artistic thing. You could also give them cameras, for example, and say, look, go and take a whole lot of pictures and pick out your 10 best. And not a competition, but you can create a gallery of that. And so the project becomes about the photography and the noticing and being in the garden and getting close up, or making a film. Say, okay, make a 1-minute film in the garden and see what happens. And so I think those are the sorts of things that can help to build in the kind of the being out in the garden is more fun than being in the classroom, and starts to get them to notice things through a cultural lens and through a fun way. And that might shift their relationship. If you said, come on, let's get a spade and we're going to go out and garden, they might just go, oh, really? And so anyway, that would be my approach to that. Someone said, even though I'm happy to share my experience to the world, I'm not sure that people will listen to me. After all, I'm just a regular person according to the world. What do you think someone like me should do to share their experiences and knowledge in the world? So I guess this is this thing, often we have a sense of, imposter syndrome. Like, what possibly have I got to say about this? Everyone has something to say. Everyone has a story. Everyone has skills. Everyone has something to share. And you know what I think is, if you have something that you'd like to share and you are enthusiastic about it, and people will listen because it's the way that you bring it forward, or maybe it's something that is useful or interesting to people. So I'd really like to encourage you just to give it a go and to try it. Someone has also said, I travel frequently and don't have a set place to stay and meet. Can I become an online teacher offering virtual classes? Great question. Now, one of the things that I find really exciting is when I'm traveling is to go and visit as many different places and projects and communities and people and examples and plants and food systems that I can possibly find, and take little films of them, take photographs and create presentations about them. And so even if you're not in your own place, you can be like the gatherer of fascinating stories and share those fascinating stories because you've spent the time traveling and exploring ideas with people, and you find a way through your interviews with people to get them to tell the story. So it could be a podcast or a YouTube or an interview or even a Zoom chat or something like that. So, yes is the answer to that question. All right, here's a bit of a juicy one. How do I make a living in permaculture education? Well, you charge for your permaculture education. And I think I said before that, maybe you're not charging sometimes directly the people who are doing it. You could be charging an organization, an agency, the local government. You could be charging the school. Maybe it's a grant that you're getting, but you actually value your time because you've spent that time doing the research, doing the experimentation, and what you have to give is incredibly valuable. So there's also people who do like this sliding scale. So there is the price that's there for people who are in the the wealthier countries who can afford it, and that would be the price. But so, for example, in my courses, there is a price, and that's the price that makes the whole thing work in terms of paying the people who are involved in the digital systems, and that's kind of how it's set, because it's what keeps the cogs moving and keeps me able to be showing up every day, to be here and be doing this work. But then also the structure I've set up enables me to be able to say to anyone who's in, say, a refugee settlement or from the global south or as a youth member, to be able to say, yes, of course, you are extremely welcome to come and be a full member of this program, because I understand that your economic system means that you're not able to participate. So you can choose how that works for you, and but, you know, value your time, value your skills, value your experience. This is incredibly important information that you're sharing with the world. And the question about where to find permaculture jobs is always a tricky one. And I always think, oh my gosh, how am I going to answer this? Because I don't see necessarily there being, you know, if you look through the paper or whatever, there being many jobs that say permaculture job. However, having said that, there are a lot more jobs that will be asking for that kind of work, and you can take the skills and the experience you have from permaculture and take that with you. I think a lot of the permaculture jobs are actually created either by local enterprises or local institutes or local community projects, and you can find work in that, or to be creating your own work. And so I'm sorry to say that that's still the situation as I see it now. There are jobs, and often what I find people is doing is wearing many hats. Someone's asked, can I start teaching part-time permaculture while I work a full-time job? Yes, of course. You know, if you can be teaching at night, or you've been teaching on the weekend. Oh, great. Thank you, Steve. I'm so glad that you're here, offering so many fantastic things in there. So, yeah, there are listings of permaculture jobs that are available in various places, and each of the different institutes I know, if I ever come across any jobs that I see or work opportunities, like some people even ask me, they say, oh, look, I've got this place and I'm looking for someone to be a manager of the site. Please, can you come in and can you find someone who might be able to do this job? So I'm always sharing out that kind of thing too. And so there's different hubs. The institutes and the associations become places that attract people looking for people who can do this work. And then, so just if you're in the loop and you stay in touch with these associations, members of your local associations, your local institutes, you can actually find those things. All right, let's keep moving on. How to fairly price. Okay, I think I've already touched on that. So you can create sliding scales. You can make it locally adapted. That really is about trying to make sure that you integrate the fair share ethic into the work that you're doing. But that's not to say that you dismiss the fair share of your capacity as a permaculture educator to also survive. I think that's really important. And I think too often within the permaculture movement, we sort of not valued that. I've seen some people just burn themselves out completely, and then that's not helping anyone, really. Okay, it's my dream, passion and vision to be an international permaculture teacher, and I've been moving around the country helping groups. How can I earn from teaching so that I can move with less struggle? I know who's written this. This is someone who is living in Kenya, who is doing remarkable work helping local women's group, local youth group, local farmer groups, and she does struggle. She is so dedicated to moving around. In this situation, what I would love to do is to encourage people to tithe, to support people like Liz. I know this is Liz. Hi, Liz, if you're here, to be able to do this work. And because they're helping people like Liz are helping those who do not have the capacity to pay. So I actually do this quite a lot. There's a number of people throughout East Africa and other parts of the world who I'm able to pay a certain stipend. And so I'm tithing to them so that they can go out and to do the work and continue to do the permaculture education work and teach other people and get gardens set up and you know, feed kids and help, you know, widows and all of the amazing work that they do. And that they do because they absolutely see the importance of doing this. And I think I would love to encourage you, any one of you, if you have the capacity to tithe someone like Liz, who's in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, in a refugee settlement, if you can tithe their wage, and it's not going to take a huge amount, not necessarily their whole wage, but even some of their transportation or their ability to go out and do a workshop a week, please talk to me, because I have so many people waiting for that kind of support, and it makes an enormous difference. All right. And just on that, it's through the Ethos Foundation, which is a registered charity that I run, and I send 100% across to them, and I never take any income myself from the work that I do in that. My income always comes from the courses that I run and all that kind of work with youth and with refugees is always something I do as the sort of the community service work. I just wanted to note that it is actually coming to the top of the hour. I'm almost towards the end of the presentation. I recognise that if you need to go, thank you for being here, and it's lovely to have your company. If you're willing to stay on for another 5 to 10 minutes, I would also really love that as well. So I just wanted to pop that in there. All right, so someone said, what are the ways to attract participants from a wider area? So the longer part of this question was saying, we've been running permaculture courses for a while, but I feel like we've run out of people to teach them to. Like, we just don't have enough people to come in. We're in a rural area. What I want to suggest in this is to actually go out and talk to those people who are there. Get back in touch with them and say, okay, so we've done this. Brooke, yes, you can watch this at a later date. Yes, of course. One of the things that I'd like to suggest to this group is, who's asked this question, is go and talk to them. Find out, well, okay, you've done this initial course. What are the extra things that you'd like to learn about? And then you can find some maybe sort of add-on courses or ways to go broader, deeper, some new ideas that can come forward. So I think, maybe it's not necessarily going out to new people wider, which you could, and social media really helps with that, or maybe offering an event that will attract people out to the countryside. That could be sort of a bit of music, a bit of a feast, a bit of a harvest festival, or something interesting like that, or tagging onto another event that's happening in your town. Like, say your town has a local festival, you can have a satellite event that's happening at your place, so that brings more people in. But I think that idea of going deeper is really important. Okay, I have the knowledge to impart things like soap making, fermenting, seed saving, and even hand-stitched clothing. But these seem so trivial in our current world. Absolutely, they're not trivial. Next Monday, we're hosting a film club with Vandana Shiva's new film, The Seeds of Vandana Shiva. And she would argue that seed saving is one of the most important things that we can be doing. So again, these kind of skills about how we can reduce our dependence on, consumer culture and find ways to actually bring that permaculture thinking right back into our home and into our daily life, and into thinking about how we can reclaim our seed heritage and our seed sovereignty. These are by no means trivial skills. And when you can offer little snips like this, I think it becomes a really accessible way. Sometimes people go, permaculture, it just seems so big and complex and I don't understand it. But if you can offer like a simple entry point, like someone might come, I'm really interested in the clothing, or I'm really like soap. It might seem simple, but it's not, because it opens the door to then start to see a whole other world. And depending on how you explain it, it can be like an awakening to a big picture. And Clinton, I was thinking of you as I was talking about that. Yes, he said, I might be biased, but as a hobbyist soap maker, it is super important. Yes, absolutely. And Clinton did an amazing pitakacha about soap making and permaculture recently, which was really brilliant. Okay, here's a question from a young man who said, can a biology year 11 student think of taking a step in life and go for this opportunity as a permaculture teacher? Yes, please do. And as I said before, one of the things that I really love to do is to support young people to take permaculture design course. Actually, there's dozens of teenagers who are doing the Permaculture Educators Program with me at the moment, who are graduating as permaculture designers and permaculture teachers. And then, I don't know where they're going to go with that, but if they're going into science or education or whatever it might be, they're taking that with them. And in the meantime, actually exploring ways to teach. My 14-year-old son graduated his permaculture design course in Africa a few years ago. And he just said to me the other day, Mum, I was thinking about it, and I think I'd like to do an online course. I wonder where he got that idea from. I'd like to do an online course about permaculture, because I think that, there's a lot of online courses, but they're all done by old people. Thanks, Hugh. And, I think young people would really like to see another young person teaching permaculture. And I said, I think you're onto something. And so, young people teaching young people is incredibly powerful, because they bring a different vibe to it. They bring the music and the languaging and the different examples and the different perspectives that, I just don't see, because, as Hugh said, I'm kind of old. How do you market yourself as a permaculture educator so you're not just doing the free work? Well, I think this is and, dare I say it, I think social media is very helpful in this, because you need to let people know what it is that you're doing. And this is, again, also I've seen it in the refugee communities. Every time they were doing something, they would film it and they would share the photographs on social media. And so people would start to see, oh, you've got that kind of expertise there. And it's a way that you can become known for having certain experience. So it's kind of like this meritocracy. It's not like, okay, I've got a piece of paper and now I can teach this. It's like, I'm doing this and I can share that with you, and people start to see it and they get interested in it. So that's one of the ways. There's so many ways. This whole kind of concept of permaculture marketing might seem like two distant worlds, but it's something that I'm really trying to bring together. And we talk a lot about it too in our courses. And I'm starting to organize a whole series of workshops that bring together marketing and publicity, and how you get, what's permaculture PR and all of those kind of things, because we need to know this information to be able to support us to become active in this world of creating a livelihood in permaculture. Someone's asked, how do I overcome prejudice against neurodiverse thinking to present in a way that engages the neurotypical? Well, I would just like to suggest to you to show up in all your complexity and to share what it is that you want to be doing and what you want to be offering. And whoever that attracts will be attracting the right people. And so that goes for every single person. It's your slant on it, your take, your particular languaging, the imagery that it uses. It will attract a certain type of people, and you'll attract the right people who need to be in the workshop with you. Where can I get ongoing mentoring support? Well, this is through all the local, the local permaculture networks. And we're just creating something too called Hive, which is a place where anyone from anywhere who's done a permaculture design course can come in. And we've got design mentoring, education mentoring. There'll be communities of practice forming that will help to create this dynamic space where you can find mentors or you can support other people in that process. So keep your eyes out for that. And I know that, Chris, too, you asked this question about, is there a call for PDC mentors to support permaculture students? Well, absolutely too. And particularly in this online space as well, because when you get a group of people who are learning, it's really great to have people who can come in and just be there to support and to answer questions and to guide people in the right direction. So this mentoring, people are searching for mentors and needing mentors. And I think particularly as the older generation of permaculture people who've been around for a while and have been doing a whole lot of amazing things, we need to have you active in the community. And then there's the question about absolute beginners. What about absolute beginners and how difficult for the non-gardeners? There are so many people who start to join our programs who've actually started with nothing and then bit by bit have explored it. And one of the things that I really encourage people to do who are at this absolute beginner stage is, as soon as you start to get one of the bits, start to share it with someone else, because it's in that sharing that you start to really land it really well. And just practice. Go and visit as many different people as you can. Go and visit as many different teachers and gardens and centers and watch as many films and absorb it. Just become a sponge for all that's out there. And I think that very rapidly you'll be able to find where your niche is, where it is that you find you feel that like there's a certain level of excitement you kind of feel when certain things happen, and notice what that is. And that would be the point in which you can begin to be where you share. All right, so is it necessary to be accredited or affiliated with an association to teach permaculture? No, it's not necessary. I just think it's really helpful. So who do you affiliate with? Well, I would encourage you to join your local permaculture group. I would encourage you to join a regional one and a national one, and there's even international groups. And also groups like different institutions, like the Permaculture Education Institute has a particular kind of focus. If you're really interested in permaculture education, well, that's kind of what we're doing here. So I think definitely the more that you network, the more that you connect, the more that you find links it's not enough just to turn up to like an annual conference or something. Find those ways to be integrated and talking with people regularly. And so someone asked too, if we do your permaculture education program, what's included? So at the moment, the permaculture education program, even though it says educators, the core foundation of it is the permaculture design certificate course. And then as we start to move through that, we're always asking, well, how would you teach that particular part? So even if you've done a permaculture course before, it's a way of really diving more deeply into that and going more broadly as well, connecting with like a whole lot of content and taking your time. So it's spacious. You have a like lifetime access to this course, which means you can take your time and really make extraordinary designs and extraordinary programs. So by the time you finish this, you've got a full design for maybe your place, a school garden, a community garden somewhere else, or even a set of designs. And then by the time you finish the teachers program, you've actually started teaching and you started reflecting on how you can improve that. And that teaching program is designed in a way that meets your particular interest, your particular community, and where it is that you feel like you've found your niche to make a living in that. And then also those business modules. And as part of this whole bundle that we're offering at the moment, we also are including the Incredible Edible Garden, which is it's the permaculture gardening course that we have. So it's all these different modules. I don't know if you can read that from there, but it's more of the practical permaculture gardening side. So there's design, teaching, business, gardening, and then the hive, which is that global community practice. So if you want more information about that, I can send that to her, and I can send out a syllabus with a follow-up email, because that was one of the questions. Can it be applied anywhere in the world? Yes, there's people who are doing these programs and doing permaculture everywhere around the world. In the Permaculture Educators Program, there's people on 6 continents. And so, yes, entirely it can be adapted and applied everywhere. And I think it's really important, though, to stay connected, because we learn from how different people are applying it all over and get inspired by what we see and hear from other places. The question also was saying, is it possible to talk directly with you or send questions? And I'm assuming that is in the course. Yes, absolutely. So as well as having the course content, we also have the series of live events that are happening. So we have design studios where people are sharing their designs and exploring those ideas together, education labs, film clubs, masterclasses, a member seminar. This coming member seminar on the 19th is going to be Dr. Brian von Hertzen, who's also a member of the Permaculture Educators Program, and he's going to be sharing about marine permaculture, for example. And then the group that are doing the yarning about permaculture on the following Monday, we're going to be diving into, what does Indigenous permaculture look like? And so we're drawing on people within the group and bringing people from beyond the group to really open up possibilities for asking questions of me and asking questions of other people who are passionate about their particular topics. And so if there are any other questions that you're holding at this point in time that you would like to ask before we close up here, I really wanted to thank you for staying on after the hour that I allocated for this session. If not, thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful to have your company. I will send up a follow-up email that will include some of the links that are being shared in here as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing that and then scan some of the questions here and see what I can find. Great. I have a dream of making permaculture courses focus on kids and teens because I think it's the right vision and mindset. Yes, absolutely, I agree. But I've been learning permaculture for almost 2 years and I still feel a lack of experience in permaculture when it's about teaching. I find it's not easy to find a reference to be a good teacher and right teacher. Oh, okay. Well, there are some pretty fabulous permaculture teaching books that are out there. Maybe what I might do is in the email put some links to those as well. And also it's something about, coming in and being part of these sorts of communities of practice where we're learning together about how to be teachers, how to design a program that fits. And so, maybe that's something about coming and being part of the hive as well, because there's that mentoring and community of support. Chris Carroll says, and answer those questions about professional development, how to become a permaculture teacher. Great. Thank you very much, Chris. That's all about the certified training. If anyone's got a question and you want to pop it to the top, that would be helpful. I'm going to see there's a question and answers separately. Can I do the teacher course only, or do I have to do the PDC again? Oh, okay, Petra. Later this year, I am working on separating the courses. It's a bit of a disentanglement that's going to happen because I've woven them together. But a lot of people are asking, can I just do the PDC or can I just do the teacher's part? So the answer is yes, but not just yet. It's coming. So Petra, that's for you. However, having said that, like I said before, I really love it when people do actually have done a permaculture course before somewhere and they come here, because when you do the first permaculture course, often you're thinking about how you can design your own place. With this one, we're thinking about how we can design our place, but we're also thinking about how we can take that knowledge and apply it and in our educational practice. So because it's from the Permaculture Education Institute, we have a different slant on how we're applying this. Okay, I did the Incredible Edible course earlier in the year. Do I need to complete? No, you don't need to complete. You can do things side by side. You can actually do the teacher's course, you can do them all side by side and they all complement, or you can take them one by one. It's up to you. What are the course assignments? Good question from Nadia. So because at the moment there's no deadline on anything. So take your time. As it comes, and there's no pressure on doing this, but we have 3 assessments for the Permaculture Design Certificate and 3 for the teacher's one. So let me just kind of quickly line them up. And they're not just assessments for assessment's sake or doing a design for design's sake. It's actually your design for your place or your project. So as you're diving into it, what's going on in the local cultural context, what's happening in local Indigenous communities, and really mapping that and getting a really sound base plan for your site. And so we go through step by step. We have checklists and all of that to get you to that point. So that's assessment number 1, the looking at what's going on. The second bit is kitchen garden design. So some people haven't designed before, some people have. So we start small so that you can get a handle on a small part of the design first and go through that process of using the design tools on just the zone 1 garden, the kitchen garden design. And then the final one is actually bringing everything together and designing your whole site and, your windbreaks and your food forests and all the different zones all together. But your site analysis and your zone 1 can kind of slot into that. So it kind of all fits in together as this one complete whole. And what I like to do too, instead of just having a design project at the end, it's something that we start from day 1. So as soon as we start looking at soils, we're looking at soil strategies. As soon as we're looking at water, we're looking at water strategies. And so it builds. And then in the education program, there's again 3 assessments. And the first one is design your permaculture program. So it's like, okay, let's go and have a look at what are the kind of people that I want to work with, what do they need, doing a needs assessment. So doing the permaculture design on your education program, and then you deliver it. So you actually offer a part of it so that by the time you finish this course, you've got a plan for your place and you've actually got your first series of permaculture workshops all mapped out. And then you do design studios so that you're learning to be a teacher of how to look at and assess and ask good questions of people who are sharing their design work so that you can then become a better design educator and a design facilitator. Clinton said, question from Nadia, how to create local adapted content to design the course. That's a really great question, and that takes time. So it's about absorbing the material that's there and then looking, and through your process of going, okay, this is what's going on in my local community. This is what the situation is. This is what the needs are. This is the problems it's facing. This is what people are actually looking for. Then you can start to find a way to adapt it. So what are the local plants? What's the local soil conditions? What are the local wind? And through your site analysis, you get to understand all of that. And then you can start to offer a course that gives the permaculture principles and the designs and the design tools and also the ethics and all of that. But the content and the application of that content is given in a locally adapted way. And maybe there's some sort of, cultural elements too. I know that within the refugee settlements, for example, part of the localization of that is adding in a whole lot of stuff around peace building at the beginning of it, because there's lots of people from different tribes that are there. Okay, if you've done a PDC, are we certified to give out PDC certificates? Well, that's a really great question. So if you've done, I mean, essentially what different people respond to that differently. So say, for example, again, I'm going to go back to the refugee settlements. They've done the PDC, but they come back to the Institute to be able to issue the certificates because it gives that credibility from that. So with more, we can talk about that too. We'd love to have some links and resources for kids. Yes, of course, I can send some out about that. Gosh, there's so many questions here. Wow. You know, one thing what I might do, because I can see that it's getting really late and people are having to leave, is I'm going to take these questions and I'm going to start to respond to them separately and send them out in emails or in different ways. All right. Well, thank you so very much all for being here. It's been an absolute delight to have you. I'm really thrilled to be able to have a chance to speak about this topic. As you can tell, permaculture education is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I feel that it's something that the more that we have permaculture teachers in the world, the more that we're going to be able to share positive and practical response to the global situation and help to build local resilience and local sense of hope and possibility and robustness in the face of everything that's going on. Amber, lovely to see you here. And yes, trauma-informed permaculture in conflict zones. Yes, please put some curriculum I would love to talk to you more about that. That is such an important area. Look, you know, this is what I was trying to explain before, that every single person has so much experience and so many particular perspectives that they bring. If you can apply a permaculture lens to that, or wrap your experience around a permaculture course, there are so many possibilities. It's kind of endless. So thank you again. I will make sure that this recording is available. I will keep answering all the questions that are coming through in the chat here. And also, if you have any questions, just feel free to email me anytime. My email is morag@permacultureeducationinstitute.org, and I would love to hear from you. And, you know, if you're interested in being part of the Permaculture Educators course, remember, it's open anytime for people to join. But if you are wanting to make the most of this fact that there's the lifetime access and also over $1,000 of discount at the moment, then like now is the time to sign in.